Jersey Joe is back as we're going to briefly recap all of the amazing moves made by Tom Fitzgerald within the last few days. And we're also going to recap the draft and talk about how the Devils approach it when it's their time to make a selection. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. As promised, my fellow writer over at Pucks and Pitchforks, Jersey Joe, who is also the host of Heads Up Hockey Podcast, is accompanying me once again to talk about the NHL draft. But not only that, we're going to talk about some of the big moves that Tom Fitzgerald has made within, the last 48 hours, because he is changing the Devils culture with a blink of an eye, and it's amazing. Obviously, one of the biggest trades was Tyler Toffoli trading away Yegor Sharangovich and a third-round pick to Calgary, and somehow, some way, the rich just keep on getting richer. So, Jersey Joe, it's been a couple days since we spoke last time, but how you holding up?
I'm doing well. I mean, oh my God, just see the productivity that Tom Fitzgerald and group is all doing. It's just, it's not just the going to the draft part, it's the building a foundation. I mentioned this in another article today on Pucks and Pitchforks.
So I want to get your thoughts on the last few moves made by Fitzgerald, because we talked briefly about one move, which was Riley Walsh being traded away to the Boston Bruins in exchange for Shane Bowers. I don't know what the potential is for Bowers. I don't know what his ceiling is, but he doesn't exactly do well in the AHL. He's a former first-round pick. So at the end of the day, I think that was more of just trying to act somewhat courteous towards Walsh to give him a better situation and possibly give him a greater chance of latching onto an NHL roster. I don't know how he would do out in Boston, but that's none of my concern. I want to get your thoughts real quick on that matter. And then let's talk about another trade that kind of fell under the radar after the Tyler Toffoli deal, and that was Mackenzie Blackwood being sent to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a 6th-round selection.
So when it came to last year's draft, and let me give a little preface. So basically, when you draft a guy like Simon Nemec with that high upside, that high skill, and the potential to be a really good two-way defenseman, that spells doom for the other guy that's been in the pipeline a little too long, and Riley Walsh. And yes, it was better for him to get dealt away, and the Devils did the right thing, because you weren't going to have to tender him, and someone else will tender him to be in their pipeline. And Boston came in and they said, you want to take Bowers? Sure. I think when the Devils get a guy like Bowers, is more for like a 4th-line center, a reliable AHL guy that can try and help Utica try and win the Calder Cup.
Okay, so what do you think about Mackenzie Blackwood being sent to San Jose? Because I said it in one of my more recent episodes that even though I feel bad that Blackwood has to start back at square one, because now he's in the middle of the Sharks rebuild and they're just beginning it. There's no playoff in their foreseeable future. So for Blackwood, I think this is actually a good opportunity for him, because he has to start over, and that can be a little tedious and it can be a little frustrating considering the fact that he's already been through a rebuild with the Devils. But if he really wants to reach his full potential, he needs to have a clean slate. He needs to start all over with a new organization that's trying to work towards something. And maybe Mike Greer actually does have a plan in place. Obviously, the Sharks had a few first-round selections that we're going to talk about a little later. But yeah, tell me what you thought about Mackenzie Blackwood and the fact that the return package was a 6th-round selection.
I wanted to chime in on Blackwood on the last one, but we got talked about a couple other guys. But other than Blackwood. So I was thinking along the lines of a 6th, 7th round pick. And I'm like, this is the perfect return on investment for the Devils, given the fact that his value has dropped the past couple of seasons between the COVID seasons, coming out of the COVID season where his injuries and his mindset has gone up and down. He's been a little Jekyll and Hyde, but not Robin Lehner Jekyll and Hyde. So for Sharks fans, when Mackenzie Blackwood is on his game, he is absolutely on his game. But if you ride him too much, he's not going to be very productive in net. He's going to let up a lot of short sides and a couple of other squeaky goals that should have gone in, and he kind of gets hard on himself.
I think the thing for Blackwood is that what I realize is it usually takes a little too long for him to settle into the game. And when he does settle in, it's too little too late because he'll let up a couple goals early. And then when he starts to settle in, those 2 goals were pretty much like killers for the Devils. So a game that I think back to is that New Year's Day game against the Carolina Hurricanes. He let in a few goals. He had a big blunder in which he missed the puck completely, and then the Hurricanes were able to pounce on it and score with ease. And yes, the Devils were able to claw their way back into the game, send it into a shootout, but they ultimately lost the game. Or I think of that Boston Bruins game towards the end of the year in which he let up 2 early goals to Pavel Zacha, the former Devil. The irony isn't lost, but at the same time, look, I know probably that first goal wasn't his fault, or one of those 2 goals wasn't his fault because the Bruins just set a good screen, and unfortunately, it just took away his eyesight. But at the same time, you can't be letting up like 2 goals like 90 seconds into the game or something like that, because I remember tweeting out saying that the game is not even out of the first period yet, and Pavel Zacha is already on hat trick watch. Or I think the ultimate killer for him was that final game of the regular season against the Washington Capitals, because he let up a bunch of goals. He was subbed out for Akira Schmid. Schmid was able to shut down the door. Devils were able to claw their way back once again and win the game. And that's when they broke the franchise record for most wins in their history. And unfortunately for Blackwood, Schmid was just able to shut down the door, not let in any more goals. And that, as a result, Blackwood lost his playoff spot to Schmid, and Schmid proved to be the better goalie, proved to have more upside. So I made a prediction a few weeks ago after I broke down Mackenzie Blackwood's exit interview. I said, come draft night, I expected for him to be dealt away. He was traded the day before the draft, but I said, I think what the Devils will try to do is get rid of his rights and get a draft pick in return, try to build up those picks, because the Devils obviously don't have a first rounder. Because I thought back to last season in which Vitek Vanecek was dealt to the Devils, and in exchange, the Devils gave the Capitals a 2nd and 3rd round draft pick. So I said, I think that sort of outcome can happen for Blackwood, which we trade his rights away and we'll get a draft pick, or we just get something out of it. But I said towards the end of his tenure as a Devil, it just seemed like he hit a wall. He needs a new change of scenery. And like I said, I feel bad that he has to essentially start over once again. But at the end of the day, and when we're looking at hindsight, I think this is exactly what Blackwood needs. He needs to take his time. All the pressure needs to alleviate off of his shoulders, and he just needs to start back at square one, so that way he can get to square 10 in which he wants to reach his full potential. So that's my thoughts on Blackwood.
Like, for me, Blackwood just wasn't going to fit. I mean, the Devils kept drafting guys as goalies like Cole Brady. You had Tyler Brennan last year, one of the top North American goaltenders last year, get selected by the Devils. I was very thrilled that they got him, and Schmid has graduated. And if the Devils move on from Vanecek and they get someone like a Hellebuck, and if that happens on day 2 of the draft, then the Devils are really like, they're kicking up in full gear for the next 3-4 seasons ish. So you're really trying to like move the needle once again.
You know, it's funny. A few months ago, somebody said the Devils have never moved the needle. Not once, not one time. Well,
Oh,
they're the mecca for players and coaches to come and try to win now. But yeah, what goes around comes around, and we ended up getting one
vice
of their
versa.
Yeah. What goes around comes around. Now, let's talk about Tyler Toffoli. I love the trade for Tyler Toffoli.
I was at the game versus the Calgary Flames earlier this season, and one of those goals that kind of took the air out of the building a little bit was Tyler Toffoli's, and he's known to have a quick shot.
Now, I got to ask you, I saw a couple articles lingering around, but it didn't seem like Tyler Toffoli to the Devils was gaining any traction. It kind of came out of left field for me because I knew Yegor Sharangovich, he was going to be dealt away. But I said in last week's episode that I project for Sharangovich to be traded for maybe a draft pick or maybe in some sort of package deal in which you can get a solid asset. But I didn't think it would be Tyler Toffoli. I didn't think the Calgary Flames would stoop that low. Quite honestly, I thought maybe they would try to get a better player, because the thing for Sharangovich is that he's a solid player. He's a middle six type of player, but the problem is he's not like a star. And I think that's what the Flames need to understand, which is you're getting someone that can help your depth and you're getting a solid asset, but you're not really going to replace Toffoli's production with Sharangovich.
Yegor Sharangovich has a lot of untapped potential for a sniper to be, but also penalty killer. So he's a hybrid player. And if, or matter of when, Calgary taps into his potential of shooting the puck more, getting guys in front for him, he's got the speed and all the other tools. He's not going to be a first line sniper, but if you can get from, let's say, 10 goals to 25, that I think would be his peak. And certainly could be a bit of a playmaker too. And he could maybe play a little bit more center role and play make if they want him to do that, but I see him more as a winger. So I think Calgary is onto something, but he just needs to shoot the puck more often.
Yeah, I mean, he was utilized at center, I'd say, early on in the year for the Devils, but that didn't really work because I said that we talk a lot about the top six. We talk a lot about that BMW line, but the one line that was never consistently talked about, or a line that was silent for the most part during the Devils' 13-game win streak, was that third line in which Sharangovich was leading the charge. There's still more in store with Jersey Joe, but before we continue, I want to tell you guys about AG1, because I started taking AG1 because I wanted to be healthier. My body's a temple. I got to start treating it as such. What is this stuff? Well, AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. AG1 replaces your multivitamin, probiotic, and more in one simple drinkable habit. Science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source super nutrients. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. AG1 helps you build your health foundation first. So it's a comprehensive solution. If you need your supplements routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. Once again, if you want to be happier, if you want to be healthier, then you really got to check out AG1. Okay, let's get back to our discussion with Jersey Joe. Take it away once more. I think for Sharangovich, it's just like he skates fast. He has a beautiful shot. He's an energizer. He's a spark plug. He's going to play effective minutes on the penalty kill. He could possibly play on the power play. I know Devils fans were yearning for him to get more opportunities on the man advantage, especially in the first half of the year. He has the capability of being that type of player, but at the same time, he's not really going to light the NHL world on fire. And I guess you could say the same for Tyler Toffoli, but Toffoli's point production and what he was able to do for the Flames should definitely not get undervalued. So Toffoli was a huge upgrade for Tom Fitzgerald. And even if Toffoli doesn't re-sign, this is a deal that's not really going to come back to bite Fitzgerald, because I said it in one of my more recent episodes, which is essentially that third round pick was what the Devils got in exchange for Damon Severson. And Severson, more likely than not, was not going to resign with the organization. He was going to be a UFA, and he was going to be a highly sought after player in a weak free agent market. And then for Yegor Sharangovich, RFA. But I did not anticipate for Sharangovich to re-sign with the Devils because he's just going to be used as a healthy scratch for the most part. And his playing time is not going to be consistent. And I just don't think we're going to get that offensive surge that we saw in his rookie year. So even if Toffoli does not resign, I don't think Fitzgerald is going to be tossing and turning at night saying, oh, we should have kept Sharangovich on our team, or maybe I should have coughed up the money to Severson. I think this is it might linger the process before Fitzgerald might just have to accept the fact that he might not get anything in return. But that's way down the line. That's worst case scenario. Toffoli is here, and he's going to be a huge help 5-on-5 and power play for the Devils.
Well, I've said this before on my recent episode of Heads Up Hockey is that you got guys on the wings such as Bratt, Meier. You have who else I'm missing? Mercer, Palat, and now you have Tyler Toffoli.
I would say here's the top six in my eyes. It will be Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Tyler Toffoli, Dawson Mercer, Timo Meier, and Jesper Bratt.
So what I'm trying to stick with the wingers is that not all those guys have to contribute 30 goals all in the same year. Some can hit 20, some can hit 50, anywhere between that. I mean, the law of average. If each guy hits between 20 and 50 goals, you have yourself a lethal lineup of finishers. And the productivity rate will most certainly help on the power play. And Toffoli's known to be on the power play. And you already got a coach lined up in Travis Green, who's known to have a really good power play. Plus, you have a guy who's familiar with Toffoli's game. And it only goes to help. And then Timo Meier knowing Toffoli out in the West Conference, it also builds really good chemistry.
Okay, last big move that was recently made, and I just want people to know this will be a full-fledged episode. However, when this episode goes live in a couple hours, Timo Meier will have a media availability, and I am going to attend that. So before I give my in-depth thoughts and analysis, I am waiting until I ask Meier a couple questions at his media availability. It's going to be at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and I post these episodes at 6:15 a.m. Eastern time. So just putting that out there. So Joe and I are not going to go into great detail about it, or at least I'm not going to provide my deep thoughts on it. But Jersey Joe, let me hear what did you think about the Meier extension?
Well, I mean, I was expecting it from the moment that the season ended. And to me, when the trade happened before the deadline, to me it was an A+ already. Now it kind of like a Christmas story. The teacher gives the kid A+++++ all around the room. To me, that's what Fitzgerald did. He front loaded the contract for the first couple seasons. Half of the deal is made up in signing bonuses. So if there's anything like a lockout or whatever, you still get paid in signing bonuses from what I've known from the CBA. This is a win-win for the Devils. It's a win-win for the fans, and it's a huge middle finger to the Metropolitan opponents trying to gain a foothold or skate hold against the Devils in the next 8 seasons.
Yeah, so Timo Meier signed an 8-year contract worth $70.4 million. So his annual average value is $8.8 million. So he does surpass Jack Hughes's annual salary, but that was to be expected. I said I'm willing to do it for Timo Meier because a player of his caliber doesn't come around too often. Lindy Ruff even said that Meier's physicality is just something that he can do on his own. And a lot of players on the team like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, they're little guys. They can't really assert themselves physically. and it's probably one of the reasons why they're never in the penalty box. But digressing a little bit, no, they're clean players.
Most part.
Yeah, a little bit of a joke. But anyway, Timo Meier and his physicality and the fact that he is this power forward and he's aggressive, a lot of the Devils players just don't really have that because that's not in their repertoire. Meier, that's definitely in his capabilities, and he's able to score efficiently. So I think for Timo, I was willing to go past the Jack Hughes threshold, as I like to call it, because last offseason they were willing to do it with Johnny Gaudreau.
He didn't want to be here.
He didn't want to be here. He signed with Columbus. And then when Matthew Tkachuk won it out of Calgary, I heard that the Devils were in the running. However, they would have had to give up too many assets in order to get him. But hypothetically, if that trade did work out and Tom Fitzgerald's family member did make his way to New Jersey, Matthew Tkachuk would have been paid more than Jack Hughes annually. So for Timo Meier, just given his potential and given what he's able to do, because his physicality was a crucial X factor for the Devils in round one against the playoffs, I was willing to surpass it. So he could score. He could help on power play. He likes to play in front of the net. Big power forward, aggressive, racks up the hits. I don't know how fans might view it, but for me, I personally like it. I think I think it was a good compromise because NHL Network was saying that Meier could get paid anywhere from like $8 million to like $10.5 million, but now it's 8.8. So no harm, no foul.
No.
I take it how you want to take it, but let's shift over from big moves that Tom Fitzgerald has made the last few hours, and let's get into your bread and butter, and that is the NHL draft. So obviously the Devils don't have a first-round pick, and it was pretty lackadaisical for the Devils discourse because we were so focused on the Toffoli trade that we didn't even care about the draft at this point because it's a little hard for me to get invested into the draft because Tom Fitzgerald said during one of his recent media availabilities that getting a first-round pick was not on the horizon. I even said that the only way I saw it happening is if they traded away Jesper Bratt. But now that he is signed long-term, that was pretty much exonerated in my eyes. So when looking at this first round, what stuck out for you?
The West Coast, the Western Conference got far more skilled and more upside than the Eastern Conference did. And it's nothing against Philly or any other team on the East Coast. I saw more high quality picks go towards the Western teams, given the fact that they were positioned to do so. And minus Arizona, they really capitalized for the most part. And to me, there were some questionables on the East Coast team, like a few East Coast teams, but San Jose hit for the most part. Arizona's first pick, what? Simashev, to me, that's the Muhammad Doolin reach of Muhammad Doolins. To me, there's not much of upside. They're really trying to go for physicality and better positioning with a little bit of offense. To me, that was too far of a stretch. I would have waited for day two for
Really?
Simashev.
Well, Simashev went 6th overall. You think he would be available in round two?
I honestly, I looked at all the other guys on Megan Chaika's draft board, and I would have gone with someone else like Lukas Dragicevic or Mikhail Gulyayev, and Gulyayev went 31st, and freaking Colorado banging them out good.
Yep, he went 2nd to last, drafted by the Colorado Avalanche. Well, something I want to point out is that with the 26th overall pick, that was the San Jose Sharks' second pick in the first round. It originally belonged to the Devils. Obviously, they gave it away for that Timo Meier deal. The Sharks selected Quentin Musty from the OHL. He played for Sudbury, and I don't know if you listened to my more recent bonus episode in which I was talking with Sean Bedard, who's the play-by-play announcer for the Erie Otters. He shared some stories about Quentin Musty and like what he brought to the table. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. The fact that me and Sean were discussing like potential OHL prospects that could go in round one. And one of the names we mentioned was Quentin Musty. And And lo and behold, 26th overall, originally belonging to the Devils, and the San Jose Sharks picked them up.
I mean, it's the Timo Meier deal. I mean, San Jose's trying to rebuild themselves back up for the next, 5 seasons at least, and they trying to do it the right way. And Mike Greer's a really good guy in the front office, and he knows what he's doing. It's just a matter of when San Jose rebuilds itself. They're going to have to find a really good goalie in order to really get themselves in the right position to be competitive in the Western Conference. And the Western Conference has won the cup the past couple of years.
Okay, other than Simashev, was there another surprise? I think one of the surprises actually came second overall when the Ducks selected Leo Carlson instead of going for Adam Fantilli or Will Smith or one of those prospects. Like, what do you think of Carlson to the Ducks? Because this is the second or third year in a row in which the Ducks, we project for them to draft this player and they completely change course of action.
Let me give the little sidebar. The head of scouting in Anaheim is Swedish. So there's a bias and there's a trend. One year he selected Isaac Lundestrom later in the draft. And he's done that in the past couple of first rounds. And I was a bit surprised, but I wasn't completely out of left field surprised. So there's a different tier of surprising because Leo Carlson, I knew he's going to be a top 5 player. But when you have a scout of a certain back, you're bound to have those things happen. So it's more predictable. But Leo Carlson, to me, is a blend of Jesper Bratt and Mikko Rantanen. So they really didn't stretch it that far.
When looking at some of our division rivals, because obviously the Columbus Blue Jackets, they had the 3rd overall pick. The Philadelphia Flyers, they had the 7th overall pick. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they had the 14th overall pick, and so on. Who do you think in our division really struck gold in the draft, and which prospect do you expect to have the most upside?
Near term, it's going to be Adam Fantilli for sure. To me, he might not play center, but he could be playing wing easily. To me, he reminds me of Rick Nash with the goal scoring, big body, power forward game. Can be physical along the boards and the hard areas. So I think of Columbus. They had Paul Castron as their director of amateur scouting, and they got Rick Nash long before he was traded to the Rangers. So that's a little note there that the Blue Jackets like guys that are big. They like guys that are physical, that can score and insert themselves.
Any more thoughts from the first round before we move on to the rest of the
absolutely. Philly, to me, they got the steal of the first round. I will say this to Devils fans and people in the Metro and the Eastern Conference, given the fact that the current state of affairs with Russia, anything can happen. Like there have been players like Yevgeny Malkin who have come and escaped those harsh pasts, even under a KHL contract. You might have to wait 3 years with that current contract of Matvei Michkov. He's under 6 feet tall, but he has a few inches to grow. He's a good goal scorer, but he's going to be a power forward type guy. Very determined player, but Arizona completely screwed up big time. They should have taken him.
You know, it's funny. I live in Arizona for a time being because I go to school out here. I went to a bar for the watch party, and when their selections came about, obviously a lot of people were hyped. When Simashev was selected, I didn't really hear that much applause. I'm not sure if people just didn't know who he was, or if that was just like out of disappointment. And then when they selected Boot, and it's spelled B-U-T, so obviously you hear some jokes here and then. But when Boot was selected a few selections later at 12th overall, I couldn't tell if the audience was saying boo or boot. So I'm not sure like what their thought process is. So just to give you some insight as to like how the Arizona discourse is feeling about those two selections.
Yeah, I honestly will say this, like, moving away from Arizona, I expected the Rangers to get someone from the USNTDP, but Jacob Perreault, to me, offensively, he's a very great player, but his skating is a bit of a problem. And you can be, the most highly, goal scorer, points maker at the USNTDP, but once you move up to college or whatever route you go, you need to improve on your skating game because people are going to catch up to you. They're going to close in on you defensively. That's a big grab for the Rangers staff. And it doesn't mean you're always going to hit a home run. Like, remember the Devils drafted Reed Boucher on the second day of the draft. They thought, this kid would break Stamkos's record, and he did. Uh, he didn't last so long. Why? Because he did not work on his skating. And that was one of the things that I have a question for uh, Perreault, Gabriel Perreault for the Rangers. But Ryan Leonard is a lighter version of Tom Wilson, so he can be a guy that can shoot the puck, uh, play physical, Sasquatch his way around, be a big body. I will say that the Capitals have gotten better. Like their timeline, they're gonna start going from good to average, and then kind of drop off a little bit more the next few seasons. Flyers still are gonna be bad, but they're gonna work their way up a little bit, depending on what Danny Briere does.
Okay, so let's talk about expectations for the second round and beyond. So we talked about this off air, which was the possibility of Tom Fitzgerald not being done making moves because the Devils will have a second round pick. However, it's going to be a little late. So the draft is obviously not a priority for the Devils, but it's still something we could talk about. So I want to get your thoughts. Like, how do the Devils go about the draft the rest of the way? Because they didn't have a first round pick, and the circumstance for them is a little different.
So if guys like goaltenders such as Carson Bjarnason or Michael Hrabal are around,
I don't think
um,
Harabal is going to make it down that
I'm
far.
just saying, like throwing it out there. If
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
around for picks 58 and in later rounds or whoever's available, like the guys I listed on my Pucks and Pitchforks article a few days ago, like guys like Damian Clara, those type of guys that usually head late in the rounds, you can place your bets on those guys towards the end. Um, Usually in the first round, like the first early rounds on day 2, I would like to think of Aram Menidian once again, a really good right-handed defenseman, two-way player. Um, I think you might look to the Youngstown Phantoms for Whitelaw. He's a right winger, sniper, a little bit undersized, but shifty. Same thing with Jesse Kiskinen, right winger, goal scorer, and a playmaker. Has the nose for the net. He's from Finland. Could only take him a few years to come over, but definitely like there's always going to be a guy like, let's say, an Andre Molnar. The Devils might have to stretch on picking him for a playmaker who could potentially be a goal scorer. So there are guys that I think if the Devils do want to reach for a certain guy, they better take them high on their boards.
So do you anticipate for Tom Fitzgerald to make another move in terms of like moving draft picks or players who are set to become free agents in just a few days?
I do expect him to move, a Ryan Graves more so than a Miles Wood. And like I said before, Miles Wood doesn't bring a whole lot to the table. Ryan Graves does, uh, versus him, and
Absolutely.
he's an upcoming free agent. So someone's gonna probably overpay for a early mid round pick. So I would happily take that return on investment once again and take someone that you have on your board and say, hey, I replaced Graves with this. Let me develop this guy, see how he turns out. You never know unless you try. And I always say, if you find a really good winger, which there are some really good wingers in this draft, some are bigger than others, some are more skilled and a bit undersized. Definitely take a shot. It doesn't hurt because the Devils have had a Jesper Bratt out of it. They had a Sharon Gosh and they flipped it. And now you're kind of reinvesting in your team because, like I said before, when you have a surplus in your pipeline, you want to keep it flowing. You don't want to have your gin and whiskey barrels not flowing with enough product. You want it to age properly so that way you can sell it as well as drink it.
Yeah, so Ryan Graves, he was tops on the team in plus minus, second to Tomas Tatar. He led the team in defensive point shares. He led the team in blocks. Ryan Graves always has that silent but deadly impact. I would greatly miss him, but I just don't think the Devils can afford him. That's the thing. And I heard reports saying that teams are interested in the services of Ryan Graves. And also, it was confirmed today during his media availability that players like Miles Wood, Tomas Tatar, and Ryan Graves will all test free agency. However, maybe it could be a Damon Severson type of circumstance where Tom Fitzgerald is able to pull a rabbit out of his hat and pull off the third sign and trade in NHL history. We'll see what happens, but
I'll throw this there. This is the flushing out moment of the outgoing players, and you need to have guys like a Luke Hughes learn to play with and without the puck and handle the takeaway giveaway game. And they need to learn. They need to play. They need to learn these valuable lessons. And there will be a little bit of growing pains this season with that. And Simon Nemec, to me, is going to make the team. 7 out of 10 times. He likely will because if they were to bring in a right-handed shot, they probably would have done so. If they do so in free agent frenzy, it's probably going to be someone on the cheap that's another veteran. But I still have 7 out of 10 times on Nemec on the right-handed side, and you already have Hamilton and you have Marino right there, and the match is going to learn from the best of the best, and he's going to be one of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if I would see Nolan Foote would be a bottom 6 winger, and that heavy shot needs to be utilized a lot more. And he looks more comfortable playing in New Jersey than in Utica. And honestly, I think he knows what it takes. It's just a matter of getting his feet even more wet.
We'll see what happens in that regards. Nolan Foote, you do have a point. It seems like he always performs well when given a chance at the NHL. Don't know if it's that chip on his shoulder or just maybe he feels more comfortable in the system. And then also factor in someone like Alexander Holtz. He could play some sort of factor. For Shimon the Mets, I personally do think he can make the opening night roster. Tom Fitzgerald didn't confirm anything. He just said like he could make it. He could not make it. We'll see what happens if Shimon is ready to take his game to the next level. But Jersey Joe, we talked essentially everything. We talked about what Tom Fitzgerald has done the last few days for the Devils organization. We talked about the draft. We talked about our expectations. So real quick, do you have any final thoughts?
My final thoughts are just because Philly got a guy in Matvei Michkov doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Look, the Devils played against guys like Alexander Ovechkin before. And before you know it, Ovechkin is going to retire. And you're going to have Michkov going to be the face of Philly for many years, but it won't start for another 3. And the Devils are going to probably be winning cups by the time he gets here, or even when he starts getting here, the Devils are already going to be one of the more dominant teams, along with like the Rangers are going to try and claw back. Any other opponent in this conference is trying to copy the Devils and the Hurricanes, and it's just going to be an interesting evolutionary shift with this division. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Devils got a different named goalie out there out of left field, like Linus Ullmark. I heard his name mentioned to be available, but I don't think the Devils would have the right return for him. But at this time, I'd like to see what the market does. So it's wait to see and happen. But day two of the draft, let's see if we get some more diamonds that could keep this pipeline flowing with goodness again.
And I will be fully happy with any move Tom Fitzgerald makes from here on out, because this guy does not miss. So, Jersey Joe, thanks for taking the time once again to come on and just talk all things hockey. We talked about the draft, talked about Fitzy, and we talked about our expectations moving forward.
Let's get him a Ring of Honor already. Let's get him a statue or something. Come on.
Gotta win first. Gotta win a Stanley Cup first.
We're gonna start winning them and then start building.
I haven't looked at the FanDuel odds in a minute, but I remember they projected for the Devils to go back-to-back in 2025 and 2026. So given the fact that the Devils have made some big moves to their personnel, that might change a little bit, because they're a while ago they were projecting for the Carolina Hurricanes to win the 2024 Stanley Cup. But
last I saw, I think, what was it, FanDuel or something? It was minus 1,400. I'm guessing it's probably minus 1,200 right now. That's my guess, but I'm not a sports bettor or anything like that. But I'm more of an odds and probability person. So I just like to see what people have in our favor and against us. So I just like to see how people perceive us now, is that they're actually taking us more seriously here in the information age of social media and podcasts, not just us Devils podcast personalities, but it's great to see even the big names out there recognize us.
And we're definitely going to be just going higher and higher from here on out. And like I do to close out every show, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Jersey Joe, thanks for chiming in once more.
Thank you, Trey. It's always great to be with you folks on Locked On Devils. Hit like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell on all podcatchers so you can listen to all the podcasts, all on Locked On Devils. Thank you.
I appreciate the shout out.